Could having a thriving real estate business simply be as easy as asking yourself who is your ideal client and then figuring out how you can add value to them? I believe it can be, and I'm going to share with you exactly how to put this process together that'll help your business grow. Identifying who your ideal client really is the foundation for a thriving real estate business. So what I want to do today is I want to kind of go through, understand who that ideal client is, how we can figure out who they are, understand then that what that process does is it gives us the ability to have a filter of where we're going, and then ultimately, how are we going to stay in front of those folks so that they know that we're the resource they need in their real estate needs. All right, so let's start right where we should start with everything in our real estate business. Who is your ideal client? Who is it you want to work with? Who can you serve best? Now, I want to start, if you've been doing this for a little while, think about your favorite transactions. Who was the client you worked with? What type of home did they buy or did they sell? Was it something where you had something in common with them, maybe like a hobby or something? Maybe they had kids your age. Maybe it was something where they were aspirational. You wanted to be more like them. Whatever that was, who was that ideal client that you've worked with in the past that was the best transaction you can remember? Now, let's break this down a little bit. Were they a buyer or were they a seller? If you love working with buyers, then listen, it's going to be very difficult, especially when you're beginning, to start out working with sellers, even though foundationally that's the thing we need to move towards, which is having more listings. But if your ideal client and you're starting out was a buyer, start working with buyers. Your buyers will then become your sellers as the natural progression of your business happens. Was it someone that was a seller? Great. What type of home were they in? What neighborhood did they live in? What was the thing that really that you thought about when you can look back on this transaction? You say, you know what? I loved working with that person because I loved their house. What was that ideal house? Because that ideal house is going to be the place where we find that ideal client. Also, did you have those hobbies? We talked about this a little bit before. What things did you have in common with them? A lot of times we attract people that are like ourselves. We enjoy spending time with people that are going through some of the same things in life we are. It was very difficult when I first started. As a very young age, at my early 20s, I worked mostly with first-time home buyers because that was the stage of life I was in. Then as I began to grow, I began to have a lot of clients that had kids and that were married. And then as I got older, then I began working with people that were working on second homes or investment properties. You see, what we can do sometimes is we start out at a place where we're at in our business and we will actually grow with our clients. So don't be afraid that if ultimately you want to end up in luxury and you're living in an apartment, you can absolutely work with those folks if that's the aspiration you're wanting to do. But don't be afraid to line up with the people that are going through the same things you are in life, because they can relate to you, you can relate to them, and you have the ability to serve them in a pretty amazing way. All right, now that we know who our ideal client is, and listen, this can be something that changes over time, but your ideal client right now, once we understand who that is and we're focused on providing value to them, now we have the second part, which is now we have a filter for everything we do. Now we need to filter this question. Does this help me serve my ideal client better? Should I buy online leads? Does it help you get closer to your ideal client and serve them better? Maybe it does or maybe it doesn't. Should I farm this particular neighborhood? Is this neighborhood a part of a place where your ideal client is either going to buy or sell? That's the filter we use. If the answer is no, then hey, let's go find the things that actually serve that person best. Should I be on Instagram or should I be on TikTok? Which platform is your ideal client on? You see, when we have the filter and we understand that everything we're focusing in on is adding value to that person, adding it in a way that they would want to receive it, all of a sudden now momentum begins to build and our business can't help but grow. All right, so in review, now we know who our ideal client is. Now we have our filter. Now that we have our filter on the questions we have, now we can get laser focused on adding value to this group of people. What is it that they want? Do they want to understand what their home is worth? Do they want to know about properties that are coming on the market at any given time immediately? What is it they truly want? Do they want to know what's going on with interest rates? Do they want to know what's happening in the overall market? Are they curious about what's happening at the local schools? You see, when we get to a place where we understand exactly who that client is, and we have a filter that does this add value to them, and the answer is yes, now we can get laser focused on adding value to that ideal group that we're trying to serve. The last part of this is that as you do these things, as you get focused and as you add value to this group, you're going to have some transactions. You're going to have some listings you take with your ideal clients. You're going to have some buyers with it or your ideal clients that you help find their ideal home. And now we need to tell that story, because people do business with people they know, like, and trust. The best way to do this is not to brag on yourself, but make them the hero. People also, if they don't know someone, they're going to line up with someone they connect with, that they're going to do business with whoever it is that that person trusted. So I'm going to give you an example. Let's say your ideal client is a young family that happens to sell their home. They list their home with you and you help them find a larger home as they're having their second child. I'm just using this as an example. When you finish that transaction, I would tell the story. I'd say, I loved working with the Smiths who were really trying to figure out how they were going to sell their current home and buy a larger home because they're expecting another baby. Tell the story of the process you went through. Now, here's what's going to happen. If that's your ideal client, guess what? The person who's now having a second child or considering growing their family, all of a sudden they're going to identify with that person and you're going to be that resource for them. Let's think about maybe that's that ideal buyer, that's that first-time home buyer. Maybe that first-time home buyer is someone that comes in and is like, I just didn't know the process. You tell their story of. When we first talked, he basically told me, I'm just not sure exactly what I need to do next. I showed him the path of getting approval on his loan. I then talked to him about finding the ideal neighborhood. I walked him through the process and now he's in his ideal home. Again, connection. You're telling the story, you're giving them the opportunity to identify with your ideal client, and which is going to magnetically draw more of your ideal clients. Now imagine it's a luxury buyer. That person that's looking for a second home, a legacy home for their family. You tell the story of how it was that they've always dreamed of living in your area and having a home on the beach, for instance. You tell that story, all of a sudden that other family that's somewhere that's thinking about moving to our area along 30A, thinking about that second home, that luxury home where they can spend time with family, friends, colleagues, people in their business, they begin to identify with those folks and you become that resource. Understanding exactly who your ideal client is, focusing in on the question of, does this add value to them with that filter, and then really getting laser focused on adding value and telling the stories of how you've helped people like them. This is a recipe that can't help but see your business grow. I hope this has been helpful, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for watching the video. I specifically chose the video below for you because it builds on the one you just watched. I hope it's helpful, and I'll talk to you soon.